At a quiet suburban barbecue, a Marine's homecoming is ambushed, not by enemies overseas, but by a tyrannical HOA president with a grudge. When false charges, midnight raids, and public smears erupt, one veteran won't back down. This isn't just a party, it's war in Oakridge Estates.
I had not seen my brother in almost a year, not since he shipped out on that last 9-month deployment. So that Saturday morning, I was running on nothing but burnt coffee and adrenaline. The backyard behind my mom's house looked like a recruiting poster threw up all over it. Marine Corps flags on the fence, red, white, and blue streamers tangled in the oak branches, a banner I had wrestled with for half an hour that read, "Welcome home, Sergeant Brooks." Mom kept hovering, pretending to rearrange napkins just so she could wipe tears off her cheeks when she thought I wasn't looking. I had bought this place 3 years earlier, so she could finally stop worrying about rent. And I lived in the little guest house out back, which usually kept me off the HOA radar. That morning I was very much on their radar, but I didn't know it yet. By early afternoon the guys started rolling in, trucks lining the curb, license plates from 3 different states, the yard filling with the kind of men and women who knew how to stand up straight, even when they were laughing. Marcus, who looked like he could bench press a refrigerator, hauled in a cooler the size of a bathtub. Jamie, who had patched more holes in people than I could count, brought homemade salsa and insisted it was a medical necessity. There were about 25 of us by the time I texted Tyler that I was 5 minutes out from the airport, and everyone ducked behind fences and hedges like a badly trained flash mob. When I pulled up to the arrivals curb, he looked thinner, a little older, but his grin was the same stupid one he had when he was 12 and broke my windshield with a baseball. He tossed his duffel into the bed of my truck, and we drove back, talking about nothing important. Music low, the neighborhood sun glaring off manicured lawns. I told him Mom had made him a cake. I did not tell him that half his old platoon was waiting behind my garage. I walked him through the side gate, straight into the backyard, and the second he stepped past the fence, the place exploded. Shouts, clapping, Marcus almost tackling him, Mom crying openly, someone firing off a party popper that nearly gave me a heart attack. Tyler just stood there blinking, hands shaking, before he grabbed me and crushed my ribs like he was trying to pay me back for every fight we had ever had. For a while, it was perfect. Burgers sizzling, the old Bluetooth speaker playing just loud enough to hear, everyone swapping stories that were half true and twice funny. At about 5:30, when the sun was still high and nobody had even cracked anything stronger than soda, I heard the electric whine of a golf cart behind the fence. I turned to see Gladys Pemberton gliding up the driveway like a parade float of pure irritation. She stepped out in her pearl necklace and visor, arms folded so tight I was surprised her elbows didn't snap. "Mr. Brooks," she barked, projecting her voice over 25 people without a microphone, "what exactly do you think you're doing?" I wiped my hands on a paper towel and walked over, keeping my tone level. "My brother just got back from deployment, ma'am. We're throwing him a birthday party." "Parties are prohibited in Oakridge Estates without committee approval," she snapped. "You are in violation of community standards." "We filed a notice last week," I said, pulling the folded copy out of my pocket. "No response means automatic approval under the bylaws." She took one look at the secretary's signature and the date and went pale, then immediately doubled down. "This noise is disturbing the peace. I will not have this kind of behavior in my neighborhood." Marcus stood up from the picnic table, all 2 meters of him, and said politely, "Ma'am, it's not even 6 yet." Her lips pinched into a line so thin it practically disappeared. "I am calling the police," she announced, already fishing her phone out of her purse. I shrugged. "You're welcome to." She marched back to her cart in a cloud of offended dignity, while my brother leaned over and whispered, "Who was that?" I told him later. For the moment, I just handed him a burger and hoped she would cool off. The cops showed up about 20 minutes later, right when we were slicing into the second round of cake, and Tyler had just started losing a cornhole match to a Navy vet in his 60s. The cruiser pulled up slowly, lights off, no sirens, classic, we don't expect much body language. 2 officers stepped out. One was younger, all clean lines and clipboard energy. The other was older, Latino, and had the distinct gait of a guy whose knees had seen too many years of combat boots. Gladys came scuttling up the driveway like she had been waiting in ambush behind the mailbox. "Officers! Officers!" she called, waving her phone. "Thank God you're here. It's absolute chaos back here. Illegal gathering, noise violations. I feared for my safety." The older officer gave her a brief nod and kept walking. His name tag read, Chert Diaz. "Good evening, ma'am," he said without breaking stride. "Let's take a look." They stepped into the backyard and took in the scene. Clean tables, burgers on the grill, folding chairs, military flags, a cooler of soda. A couple of the guys stood when they saw uniforms out of habit. Tyler put down his beanbag and raised an eyebrow at me. Diaz's eyes scanned the group, then settled on my arm, the old Semper Fi tattoo, and flicked over to Tyler's haircut and the eagle, globe, and anchor patch on his sleeve. The recognition was instant. I saw it in the half-smile he tried not to let show. "You the host here?" he asked. "Yes, sir," I said. "Logan Brooks. This is my property. We're just having a birthday party. My brother just got back from overseas." Diaz gave a slow nod. "Welcome home, Sergeant." Tyler straightened a little. "Thank you, sir." The younger officer pulled out a decibel meter and walked a slow lap near the fence. Diaz turned to Gladys, who had now stepped just inside the gate like she was auditioning for a Neighborhood Watch episode of Cop C. "What specific violations are you alleging, ma'am?" he asked, calm but firm. "The noise," she hissed, "and the gathering itself. They didn't have permission. There are military flags out here, for God's sake. My windows are vibrating. People are drinking." "We're drinking soda, ma'am," Marcus offered, holding up a can of root beer the size of a thermos. The younger cop returned. 45 decibels, he said. Well below the county max of 65 for residential. Music's at background level. No open containers. Diaz glanced over the notification slip I handed him. Notice of gathering was filed and received. According to HOA bylaws, lack of response is de facto approval. Gladys sputtered. "But I'm the HOA president. I never saw this." "Your secretary signed for it," I said. "That's her signature right there." Diaz turned back to her, the smile gone. "Ma'am, at this time we see no violations. We're not here to enforce HOA politics. If you call us again without cause, that's a misuse of emergency services and could carry a penalty. Do you understand?" Gladys looked like she was about to explode into 1,000 pearl-buttoned fragments. "I will be reporting this. All of you. I demand an incident report." "You're welcome to request one through non-emergency channels," the younger officer said, clearly bored now. Just to twist the knife a little, Jamie walked over with a plate of burgers. "You fellas hungry?" Diaz chuckled, waved him off. "Appreciate it. We're good." They left without incident, and as the gate swung closed behind them, someone, probably Marcus, started clapping. Within seconds, half the yard joined in. It was loud, ridiculous, and not remotely HOA approved. I just stood there grinning, one hand on Tyler's shoulder, the other still holding a slice of cake. I looked down the street just in time to see Gladys reverse her golf cart out of my driveway like she was backing out of a war zone, red in the face and muttering at no one. By Monday morning, the party was a warm memory, and my trash bins were still full of paper plates and burger wrappers. But Gladys Pemberton clearly hadn't moved on. I got my first letter that afternoon, folded in thirds and shoved into my mailbox with the aggressive confidence of someone who doesn't believe in stamps. It was from the HOA Compliance Committee, a group that, as far as I could tell, consisted entirely of Gladys, her poodle, and a printer she didn't know how to use properly. Violation Notice Number 1. Fence paint color does not meet community standards. Tone deviates from approved palette. Fine. $200. The fence hadn't been touched in 3 years. I had the receipts from the previous owner, and the paint code was listed in the real estate file. Still, I figured it was a fluke. I took a picture, stapled a copy of the receipt to it, and hand-delivered my appeal to the HOA drop box. Tuesday, there was another letter. Violation Notice Number 2. Unauthorized vehicle parked in landscaping zone. Damage to lawn turf. Fine. $150. My truck had been parked in the driveway like it always was. One tire, had rolled onto the strip of grass between the pavement and the hedge. I could still see the faint indentation in the grass where they must have taken a photo. I laughed, filed another appeal, and took a fresh picture with a ruler next to the tire mark. It was less than 2 inches. Wednesday? You guessed it. Violation. Notice Number 3. Guest structure, detached unit, does not comply with zoning limitations for permanent habitation. Threat of penalty. $5,000. Unless corrective demolition was scheduled. They were coming after the guest house now, the one I lived in, the one listed in the original blueprints, the one that had passed inspection, wore seat twice. When I purchased the property, they were trying to evict me from my own backyard. That same week, I had 2 anonymous complaints filed against my business. The county inspector came by the garage I owned on the edge of town, looking sheepish as hell. "Sorry, Logan," he said, holding the clipboard like a shield. "Got a report that you were doing body work without permits and maybe storing hazardous fluids improperly." He did the walkthrough. Every tool in its place, all certifications posted, chemicals labeled, and stored according to code. He left apologizing for wasting my time. 2 days later, another inspector came, this time from the state. Same complaint. Same result. 0 violations. Friday morning, I found someone had thrown a stack of HOA newsletters onto my porch, each one folded open to the Community Values section. It was filled with passive-aggressive gems like, "Some residents believe rules don't apply to them." "We must preserve the integrity of Oakridge Estates from those who treat it like a military base." It was obvious who it was aimed at. Gladys was starting a whisper campaign, and I had no doubt she was the one filing the bogus complaints. I checked the security footage. No faces, but the silhouette of the person dropping off the newsletters matched her wiry little frame and the shoulder pad outline of a Cold War general. I didn't lose my temper. Not yet. I knew that's what she wanted. To bait me into yelling or threatening her, something she could twist and report. Instead, I printed every letter, every complaint, and started building a file. Not just a folder either. I bought a binder and labeled it Operation Petty Tyrant. I even added color-coded tabs. It helped me sleep. What started to bother me more wasn't the fines. I knew they wouldn't hold up. It was how she was twisting the community against me. A couple neighbors started acting differently. A guy who used to wave every morning stopped making eye contact. A woman I'd helped with a flat tire a month ago turned and walked the other way when she saw me at the mailbox. One afternoon, I caught two people, not from my block, walking up and down the street with clipboards. When I asked if they needed help, one of them mumbled something about property standards survey and practically sprinted off when I asked who sent them. My cameras caught them snapping photos of my yard, garage, even through the back fence. That evening, I sat on the porch with a beer, flipping through the growing pile of violation notices and half-baked propaganda. My mom came out and sat beside me. "She's not going to stop, is she?" she asked. "No," I said. "She thinks if she piles on enough nonsense, I'll snap or give up." "Are you?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Hell no." We clinked bottles. I didn't say it, but I was already thinking of my next step. I was raised to fight fair, but I was also trained to finish what someone else starts. It was 2:36 in the goddamn morning when I heard the first voice outside my window. A sharp whisper, like someone trying to sound in charge without waking up the whole street. "Camera over here. Point it this way." I rolled out of bed before my brain even registered the words. Muscle memory. 8 years in the Corps will do that to you. I grabbed the shirt off the chair, my phone, and stepped into my boots, barefoot. Didn't even stop to turn on the light. Just went straight to the back door and checked the feed from the porch cameras. There were 6 of them. Reflective vests with Neighborhood Watch printed on the back in cheap block letters. Flashlights slicing through the yard. 2 of them pointing phones at the guest house. One had a clipboard. One was taking photos of my trash bins. Another was actually measuring the distance from my fire pit to the fence. Measuring. At 3 in the morning. I opened the door and stepped outside. "Back off my property," I said, loud and flat. No yelling, no posturing. Just command voice. They froze, startled, flashlights swerving toward me. One of them, thin guy, jittery hands, said, "This is a neighborhood inspection." "Not at this hour, it isn't." "This is within our rights," the clipboard guy said, already retreating toward the side gate. "Wrong. You're trespassing. You didn't notify the owner. That's me. You've got 10 seconds to clear off my property before I call the sheriff and press charges for illegal entry." That was when one of them, the jumpy one, tripped over the edge of the planter box, stumbled, and hit the ground like he'd been tackled. Landed hard on his elbow and let out a dramatic groan, like he'd been shot. "Oh my God!" one of the others yelled. "You pushed him!" I hadn't moved. My arms were crossed. "I've got it on camera," I said. "All of it, including you trespassing, photographing my home, and lying about a fall." They were gone in seconds, scattering like roaches. One of them yelled something about calling a lawyer. Another dropped a measuring tape in the rush. I stood there for another minute, heart rate just starting to slow, before I walked back inside and saved all 6 security feeds from my camera system onto 2 separate drives. I didn't sleep after that. By 10 the next morning, the fallout had begun. An article appeared on the Oakridge Community News blog, the same one Gladys loved to post her presidential updates on. Local veteran aggressively confronts volunteers, 1 injured. Late-night inspection met with threats, intimidation. Eyewitnesses report property owner shouted and made physical contact. They didn't name me outright, but they didn't have to. The words veteran, guest house, and garage business painted a picture clear enough for anyone in Oakridge to connect the dots. There were already comments. One said, "He's unstable. People like that shouldn't live in family communities." Another, "Just proves some people bring their war home with them." I laughed at first, that sharp, bitter kind of laugh that doesn't reach your chest. Then I opened my email and saw a message from the local news outlet. Channel 8 Action News. Mr. Brooks, we're reaching out for comment regarding the incident early this morning. There are conflicting accounts, and we'd like to include your side of the story." That's when it hit me. Gladys wasn't just playing HOA games anymore. She was going public. She was trying to ruin me outside the neighborhood, too. Make me look like some unhinged, violent vet who couldn't be trusted. She was laying the groundwork for something bigger. I didn't respond to the reporter. Not yet. I called Diaz instead. Told him what happened, asked him to come take a statement and review the footage. He showed up within 2 hours. "Jesus," he muttered, watching the video. "These people are nuts." "Tell me something I don't know," I said. He took notes, promised to file a report, and warned me that even if it didn't lead to charges, the smear campaign could stick. "People read headlines," he said. "They don't wait for the facts." By evening, more neighbors were talking, some supportive, some not. One woman stopped me as I was unloading groceries. "I just wanted to say," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder, "I saw the cameras on your house. You did nothing wrong." I thanked her, but inside I could feel the shift. This wasn't just about HOA fines anymore. Gladys was trying to poison my name, turn perception into weapon. So I made a new tab in my binder. I labeled it False Allegations. Media. It was a Thursday morning when the war took its next turn. And this time, she didn't come after me. She went after my brother. I had just gotten off a call with a potential supplier when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't pick up. Thought it might be another HOA troll, or maybe that pushy local reporter again. But something in my gut made me answer. "Mr. Brooks," the voice said, steady, professional, with just enough edge to raise every hair on my neck. "Yes. This is Captain Erickson with the United States Marine Corps. I need to speak with you regarding an incident report filed about Sergeant Tyler Brooks." My heart stopped. "What incident?" "There's been a formal complaint submitted to the base command. Allegations include participation in an unauthorized civilian gathering, threatening behavior toward residents, and verbal harassment. The report claims he endangered the safety of a community member." I leaned forward in my chair, pressing my palm against my forehead. "Captain, that's not just false. That's fiction." "I figured," he said, voice softening slightly. "But once a complaint hits the system, we're required to open a preliminary inquiry. I'll need any documentation you have that can clarify the matter." "I have everything," I said immediately. "Surveillance footage, witness statements, copies of HOA correspondence, even the original event notice. I'll have it in your inbox within the hour." I didn't even hang up before pulling up the binder. The Operation Petty Tyrant Archive, and scanning in pages like a machine. Every violation letter, every photo, every printout of her community blog posts, where she'd started labeling us as dangerous outsiders. I exported the entire day of video from all 8 security cameras around the property. You could see the party, see the calm, see Tyler smiling, laughing, hugging people. There was no aggression, no disturbance, no incident. I added statements from 5 neighbors, all military, who were present that day. I asked Marcus to record his own, which he did with typical dramatic flair, sitting in front of the flag, reading it like a deposition. Jamie's was calmer, clinical. She even included a note on the measured decibel levels and fire safety compliance, because of course she did. I sent the whole packet to Captain Erickson. Then I waited. The next day, I started hearing whispers that someone had filed a complaint with the Propré. State Veterans Licensing Board claimed I was advertising my auto shop as veteran-owned fraudulently, claimed I'd never served, that I was using false valor for profit. That one burned deeper than any of the others. I scanned the complaint. It was unsigned, anonymous, but came with screenshots, my business card, my bio on the website, even a social media post from 2 years ago. The accusations were laughable to anyone who had ever met me, but still, someone had gone to the trouble to try and dismantle my livelihood, brick by brick. That night, I sat on the porch again, beer in hand, the crickets buzzing in the hedges. Mom sat beside me in silence, her hands clenched tight in her lap. "I knew she was petty," she said, "but this is evil." I nodded. She can't beat me straight, so she's trying to drown me in lies. "That woman thinks this neighborhood is her kingdom," Mom muttered. "And you challenged her throne." I didn't answer. I was watching the flickering lights down the street from Gladys's porch. People still visited her, still treated her like the grand matron of Oakridge. But they didn't know what I knew. They didn't know that she'd tried to destroy a Marine's career, that she sent a false report to the Corps about a man who had bled for this country, that she tried to paint a decorated veteran as a threat to civilians, all because her ego had taken a hit in front of a barbecue grill. She wanted to break me, but instead she gave me ammunition, and I was done playing defense. The next day, I met with Marcus, Jamie, and 3 other neighbors in my garage. We sat around the tool bench like it was a planning table in some backwoods war room. Jamie brought a folder. Marcus brought donuts. I brought the binder. "We're not the only ones she's messed with," said one of the guys, Dan, a Navy vet who lived 2 doors down. "She fined me $200 last year because my granddaughter's lemonade stand violated food safety rules." "She told me I couldn't hang a pride flag on my porch," said Rebecca, a retired school counselor. "Said it was politically disruptive." "She stalked my wife's Instagram," added another neighbor, "and fined us for a party she saw in a photo. That wasn't even on our property." Jamie laid out the plan. "We start with a petition. 75% of the homeowners is the threshold to call a vote to remove the HOA president. We canvass, quietly, carefully, face to face." I nodded. "And we hit the books, financials, every dime the HOA spent. If she's playing dirty, I guarantee she's hiding something." Within days, our little resistance movement turned into something real. Neighbors who'd been silent before started whispering. Some had stories. Some had receipts. We gathered signatures, slowly, methodically, and kept every sheet locked in Jamie's fireproof safe. The real turning point came when one of Gladys's own former allies, the HOA treasurer, approached us. He was tired, frustrated, and carried a manila envelope that looked like it hadn't seen sunlight in months. "Check this," he said. "You want to talk about misuse of power? Try $18,000 in administrative expenses with no receipts." The HOA account records were a mess. Spa appointments, gift cards, restaurant bills, clothing shops, all tagged as reimbursements. Most had Gladys's initials next to them, all of it hidden in vague ledger entries that no one ever questioned because she'd ruled with an iron glare for years. It wasn't just corruption anymore, it was theft. We set a date for a special homeowners meeting, sent formal notices, no more whispers. It was going public. I filed a complaint with the county about financial mismanagement. Jamie contacted a lawyer. Marcus built a damn slideshow presentation like it was a court-martial hearing. The morning of the meeting, my inbox dinged. It was from Captain Erickson. "Mr. Brooks, the investigation is complete. All charges against Sergeant Brooks have been dismissed. The claims were found to be completely unsubstantiated and malicious in nature. We are filing a formal record noting the complaint was submitted by a civilian source lacking credibility. Please thank your brother for his service." I smiled for the first time in days. That was her last shot. and she missed. The meeting took place in the Oakridge Estates Community Center, a building that smelled like dust, old carpet, and barely disguised bureaucracy. Normally, it hosted yoga classes and HOA bingo nights, but that evening it looked more like a courtroom. We packed the place. 71 homeowners showed up, more than double the usual turnout. Folding chairs were dragged out of closets. People stood along the back wall. Gladys sat at the front behind the plastic table she treated like a throne, flanked by 2 board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. She wore her signature pearls and a red blazer sharp enough to slice a throat. She didn't look worried. Not yet. The treasurer, Mr. Feldman, opened the meeting. His voice was dry, official. This emergency session has been called by homeowner petition, per HOA Charter Clause 13. The agenda is a motion to remove the sitting president and initiate a full financial audit. Gladys immediately stood up, palms out. "This is a witch hunt," she said, voice trembling with false offense. "I have served this community for 8 years. My only goal has ever been to preserve its values." Marcus raised his hand. "Then explain the $18,000 marked as administrative, with no documentation, or the spa visits listed as committee morale building." She opened her mouth, closed it, looked to the side. "Those were authorized expenses." Jamie cut her off, standing. "By whom?" the crowd murmured. Someone whispered, "She authorized herself." Someone else laughed, low and bitter. I walked to the front. No microphone. I didn't need one. "My name is Logan Brooks. I own property here, and I've stayed quiet longer than I should have, out of respect for the idea of community. But I'm not quiet anymore." I held up the binder. The damn thing was almost bursting now. "This contains 42 violations filed against me in the span of 3 weeks, all unfounded. 2 state investigations were triggered by anonymous complaints, all dismissed. A false report was filed against my brother, a Marine sergeant, accusing him of criminal behavior at his own birthday party." Gasps, whispers. Gladys's face started to flush. "That report was sent to the United States Marine Corps," I continued, voice even. "It could have ended his career. But they investigated, found it baseless, labeled it a civilian complaint from a source lacking credibility. That source was you, Mrs. Pemberton." She tried to cut in. "That's slander." "No," I said, flipping open a folder. "It's a copy of the official closure letter, signed by Captain Erickson. It's fact." I turned to the crowd. "This isn't leadership. It's abuse of power. She's fined people for decorations, for flags, for having guests. She's created a culture of fear, and she thinks no one will challenge her because we're too polite or too tired." Someone stood up near the back. Mrs. Carmichael, who'd lived here since the development opened. She fined me for putting up a Christmas nativity, called it visual clutter. More voices joined in. A man said, "She threatened my son over skateboard noise." A woman added, "She called animal control on my Labrador, said it barked too joyfully." It snowballed fast, a tide she couldn't swim against. Mr. Feldman cleared his throat. "We'll now proceed with the vote of removal, as outlined by HOA rules. Simple majority needed." Ballots were distributed. People checked boxes, dropped slips into the plastic bin. It took 10 minutes to count. 71 votes cast, Feldman said. 63 for removal. 8 against. The motion passes. Gladys stood frozen, not speaking, not blinking, just standing there like a portrait no one wanted anymore. "And due to the nature of the allegations," Feldman continued, "an audit of HOA funds will begin immediately. Pending that, a complaint has been forwarded to the district attorney's office. She finally snapped then. "You people are turning this place into a zoo," she hissed. "This was a civilized community before he showed up." She jabbed a finger at me like it was a weapon. And for the first time, no one came to her defense. 2 weeks later, the audit results were made public. $27,000 in undocumented expenditures, clothing purchases, high-end restaurant bills, personal car service receipts, an Amazon order for a $700 espresso machine shipped to her home. The district attorney filed charges for embezzlement, falsifying HOA records, and misuse of association funds. She took a plea deal, 4 years probation, 6 months of house arrest, restitution of the full amount, and a 10-year ban from serving on any board within the state. But it didn't end there. The county also fined her $12,000 for improper use of HOA authority and false reporting to public agencies. And in a separate civil suit, thanks to Jamie's lawyer friend, I won $18,500 in compensation for defamation, harassment, and targeted abuse. Every fine she ever filed against me was reversed, every record cleared, and the guest house? Declared fully compliant with zoning laws by an actual inspector, not a retiree with a clipboard and a grudge. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like balance restored. 1 year later to the day, I stood behind the same grill on the same patio, flipping burgers over open flame while red, white, and blue streamers flapped lazily in the summer breeze. The backyard smelled like smoke and spice, like charcoal and laughter. Tyler leaned against the fence nearby, sipping a cold root beer and pretending he didn't hear Marcus teasing him about that one time he got heat stroke during training. Same crew, mostly. A few more gray hairs, a few more stories, a few more kids running around with juice boxes and little American flags like they'd been drafted into a birthday parade. We'd turned it into a tradition now. Sergeant Brooks's annual homecoming bash. Whether or not he was on deployment didn't matter. This time, he was home. For good. Took a position at the recruiting office 2 towns over. Said he'd had enough sand in his boots to last a lifetime. Even Mom had relaxed. She wore a big sun hat and carried a tray of lemon bars like a queen hosting diplomats. She barely flinched when someone knocked over a soda on the patio table. Progress. At some point in the evening, I heard the soft roll of tires on gravel and turned toward the driveway. A familiar figure stepped out of a dusty black SUV, tall, broad, with a calm confidence you only see in people who've been shot at and kept their sense of humor anyway. It was Rick Hanley, our new HOA president, retired Navy. Moved in 6 months ago and somehow managed to fix more problems in 3 weeks than the old board had in 3 years. He walked up carrying a bottle of Tennessee whiskey and a grin. "I heard there was a party," he said. "There's always a party here," I replied, taking the bottle and shaking his hand. Rick looked around the yard, nodding in approval. "Back when I served, we had a rule. If your neighbors aren't complaining, you're not grilling enough." I laughed. "You'll fit in just fine." He leaned close, voice lowering slightly. "By the way, heard through the grapevine. Gladys sold her house." "Yeah?" I said, playing dumb even though I'd been counting down the days since the for sale sign went up. "Moved to a condo community down in Florida. Some upscale HOA in Tampa." I smirked. "Poor bastards." Rick chuckled. "Word is she's already filed 2 complaints about her neighbor's flamingo decorations." "Of course she has." He raised his plastic cup. "To the few, the proud, the party hosts." We toasted. Across the yard, Tyler was showing some of the younger kids how to fold a flag properly, while Marcus and Jamie argued over whether you could grill pineapple without it being a war crime. The air was full of noise, and none of it sounded like control. It sounded like community. At some point after dark, someone hung a new wooden sign on the fence. I didn't see who carved it, but it was definitely Marcus's handwriting, and I suspect Rick had a hand in mounting it. The sign read, Marine Corps Zone. Parties permitted. Karens not. It stayed up all year. Later that night, as the fire pit crackled low and most of the kids had passed out on lawn chairs, I sat back with my boots kicked up, Tyler next to me, and we watched the stars in silence. "Think she'll ever show her face around here again?" he asked. "Doubt it," I said. "But if she does, we've got the paperwork." Tyler laughed. "Semper Fi." "Semper Fi," I said, raising my glass. "She tried to ruin one birthday. She wrecked her entire legacy. And me? I got my peace, my family, and a front row seat to a neighborhood that finally figured out the difference between rules and respect. Some things are worth fighting for."
In HOA conflicts, the rules are rarely the problem. It's who enforces them and why. The story of Logan Brooks isn't just a personal clash between a homeowner and an HOA president. It's a clear case of how unchecked authority, personal bias, and procedural ambiguity can be weaponized against an individual, and how a disciplined, strategic response can dismantle that abuse. The heart of this conflict lies in the abuse of process, not power. The HOA didn't rely on legitimate violations. Instead, it used petty technicalities, manipulated inspections, and anonymous reports as a smokescreen for retaliation. Logan was targeted not because he broke rules, but because he challenged authority, and that made him a threat to a system built on control and silence. This case exposes how psychological warfare often replaces legal process. Midnight inspections, HOA newsletters used as smear tools, weaponized rumors. These weren't governance tactics. They were coercive methods designed to isolate, provoke, and label Logan as a problem. When those in power can't win with facts, they escalate emotionally, hoping the target will break first. But Logan didn't. That's what made this story powerful. His response wasn't loud. It was measured, strategic, and well-documented. He refused to react impulsively. Instead, he built a wall of evidence, time-stamped footage, copies of every notice, formal legal responses, and even military records to counter false claims. His restraint turned every attack into proof of harassment. Even more critically, Logan didn't try to win alone. He activated his community, giving others the courage to speak up. What began as targeted harassment became a collective reckoning, one that forced audits, exposed corruption, and ultimately restructured the HOA's leadership. Because when one person pushes back with truth, others often follow. HOA abuse thrives in silence, ambiguity, and fear. The strongest defense isn't outrage. It's clarity, documentation, and unity. Know your rights, build your case, and never fight alone.